So as you're standing, begin to walk and feel the first strategy for conserving energy, your rotation of your pelvis. Walk and feel how much your pelvis twists around the standing leg, because it twists not in the middle. It actually doesn't twist in the middle when the center of mass is. It twists around your supporting hip. So you walk and feel when you step forward, how much the pelvis turns forward. Now stop for a moment and make a step forward without turning your pelvis. Feel how your hip joint has to work more. Your step will get shorter, or if you wanted to make longer step, you would have to reach more with your hip joint by flexing your hip joint. Feel that. Compare now. Go back to allowing the pelvis. Let's do this for simplicity. Left foot is standing for now, and you're just swinging your right leg. You're just initiating the step with your right leg, and then come back. Just this portion. Right foot steps forward, bring it back. Step forward, bring it back. And feel. Most of us naturally will turn the pelvis. Some of us turn the pelvis too much because of a limitation of the hip joint, perhaps. Movement. People with limited flexion of the right hip will turn the pelvis more, or extension of the left hip. They will also turn the pelvis more. If I have difficulty with movement of the hip, I will substitute it with twisting the pelvis, twisting the lower back. Feel what happens naturally. And don't lunge. Think of walking. Don't make a super huge movement. Right foot forward, come back. Right foot forward, come back. And feel how much your right pelvis turns forward. Now switch legs and observe it on the left side. You're stepping forward with the left. Feel your pelvis. I like some of you put hands on the hips. Beautiful. Put your hands on your pelvis, and your hands will give you more appreciation of what happens, the turning of the pelvis. Can you feel a difference between the two sides? Somebody said, I find more abdominal engagement when pelvis is restricted. Right, because our abdominals sometimes constrain, or they do constrain. They make this cylinder of the body. And to some degree, we don't want the pelvis to be twisting excessively. The ideal movement is about 3 to 4 degrees on each side, to each direction. So it's not a huge movement. Sometimes we see people on the streets with the pelvis, with the buttocks moving quite a lot, right and left, a lot of movement in the lower back through that. 3 to 4 degrees with 3 miles per hour. Of course, if you walk faster, if you increase the stride length of step, yes, you will have bigger movements of the pelvis. Or if you look at fast walkers, competitive fast walkers, they look very peculiar. They actually look strange with their pelvis moving so much to elongate. Now, go back to standing on the left foot. Step forward with the right, but don't move your pelvis, and feel how much shorter your step gets. And in order to go just as much, you would need to flex or move forward your thigh more, but then you will have that pencil thing. Can you feel you dropping suddenly? Because that leg, the pelvis doesn't allow you to elongate functionally your leg. Do it a few times. Pelvis is pretty much level. If you look in the mirror, you wouldn't see any belly button or pubic area going right and left. It just stays forward. And if you were to make a large step, feel how you fall, how you actually pound on your heel, because you fall off the tall stance, right? Mid stance is the tallest, and then you go like a Tower of Pisa leaning forward, and you catch yourself on the opposite heel. Now compare that with turning the pelvis. Do 2 steps forward with the right leg with the pelvis turning, 2 steps without the pelvis turning, and feel that movement of center of mass just dropping bigger. After you do that, we switch legs and we'll do the same thing on the left foot. Try that with the left, standing on the right, step forward with left, observe amount of rotation in the pelvis. Beautiful. Then step forward with the left, not turning the pelvis. Feel you're missing an inch, right? You're starting to fall on the leg. You couldn't walk, you couldn't have that same length of stride. And if you did, there'll be larger excursion of your crown of the head going up and down. Fantastic. I'll show you. Let's take a look on the, come to the screen. You can sit down for a moment, rest a bit. Let's check the anatomy app. So here we see the pelvis. We see the pelvis, we see the lumbar spine, we see sacrum here. When I said the second sacral vertebra is somewhere where I point. So this is where you put your hand below the belly button and above the pubic bone. Somewhere here is where you will find that center of mass. This is the sacrum has fused vertebra. We don't have movement in the sacral region, it's all fused, but you can still, if you look at the architecture, you can still recognize that at some point there were actually bones that probably moved. So here, if we zoom in, this is where your center of mass is, here in standing. Now, these are cups of our hips called acetabulum. That's where your hip joint sits. That's from underneath. If you imagine the ball sitting here and providing with you with that sturdy contact, with that sturdy support. This is your right one, this is your left one, right? And we go behind view, sacrum, 2 iliac bones, and if we go, we see seat bones here. So if we did bird's eye view, let me see if I can mimic that kind of movement here. So this is bird's eye view. We see the plate of the lumbar vertebra. We could see, imagine a head somewhere here. What we are talking about is the movement of, not like this. Oh, yeah. I'm not a good captain here. Okay, here. Now, see the movement of the, now imagine standing on the left leg and the right pelvis turning forward as you're making the step forward. Reversing would be this. And again, you stand on the left leg and your pelvis rotates around where my pointer is. And my pointer is about where the hip joint is here, right? So we go back, we turn it from bird's eye view. Let's bring it here. Let's make it even clearer. That's right. Now let's try to do the spinning over the right. Pointer is here. And let's see if I can make it move. Not like this, but like that. The person is standing on the right leg and the pelvis is rotating, advancing forward. Feel how this elongates your step if you allow the pelvis to rotate. Without this, the leg would have to make that distance. That's what you do. That's what you can do. From side, and then we switch and we go up, and we go here. And the pelvis walked. Okay, let not me be silly. All right, great. So that's the first strategy. The second strategy for conservation of energy is the foot movements, flexion and pointing. Come to sitting on the chair. Again, move away from the computer so you have plenty of room. Ideally, not the chair that can roll from underneath you, but sturdy. It could be sofa. We won't spend a lot of time, so don't worry about that. And now begin to make right ankle movements of flexing and pointing. Flexing and pointing your ankle. You can put your right foot in front of you. Some of you would like it to straighten the leg a little bit. That's fine. And point your leg and flex it. For walking, for ideal walking, you need about 20 degrees of pointing, which is nowhere near the full ability of the foot to point. So we use only small amount or medium size of range that it's fully possible. And then we need 10 degrees of dorsiflexion. Dorsiflexion is when the toes come towards you. So you need about 10 degrees for dorsiflexion, 20 degrees for plantar flexion for walking at your normal speeds, the 3 miles per hour. Feel the movement as you're doing this. The lack of dorsiflexion is particularly important because many of us who have limited dorsiflexion will substitute this with three things. One is pronation, the foot falling, arch will fall. The second is out-toeing. People call it walking like a duck, where you don't have enough dorsiflexion. You will tend to avoid that movement by turning out-toeing. And the third consequence of insufficient dorsiflexion is a bouncy gait, the premature heel lift. If the person cannot flex, as their body is moving forward, the heel picks up too early. You see this, a classic example is people with cerebral palsy, when the heel lifts so early. So it's important if we can to restore that good dorsiflexion. Now let's do it a few times with your left foot. Flex point your left foot. Simply, your left leg can be in front, your heel is lying on the floor, and you flex your foot where your toes are coming toward you, and you point your foot away. And feel that both strategies make your leg longer. Can you picture that? Both strategies make your leg longer. Pointing to toes is obvious, right? Like if you dip your toes in the water, you make the leg longer. But for some, flexing ankle is not clear. See if your heel can slide away from you on the carpet. If the heel gets further away, you protruding your heel away, allow the heel to slide. That's how your leg gets longer too. This is happening right before you strike the floor with your heel. And it actually, the term heel strike is incorrect because our heel kisses the floor. It doesn't strike it. It needs to land. It's the term is suggested. The suggestion is to replace it with contact, heel contact with the floor. The old way we used to talk, and I still use it, is called heel strike, but that connotates some pounding, or it's just gently like a cat accepting weight. But imagine when you dorsiflex the foot, can you imagine this is the point where your heel would be about to land on the floor? And then pointing is when the foot is behind you, when you're lifting your heel and you're starting to push off. Good. Now bring your feet underneath you in sitting and alternate. Move the right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, and feel that in a moment you will start to sense, and I can see the heads here, people's heads starting to go whoop, whoop from one side to side. Feel you're just doing the movement of the feet, and the body, the whole body starts to respond. Your shoulders, your chest, your head, which way the head is turning to. It's not a surprise that it turns toward the foot that's dorsiflexing, right? Try it in the opposite direction and it will feel funny. You'll feel like a block. John Wayne. And then go back to turning or allowing the head to turn toward the foot that lifts, the ball of the foot that lifts. Great. Stop, stand up. Go back to the step with your right foot. You stand on the left and you just initiate the step with the right foot and land, make that contact of the heel and feel while you landing if your foot dorsiflexes, if your toes and the ball of the foot lift toward you, which functionally lengthens your leg. So now you have two places from where you can conserve energy: pelvis rotation and dorsiflexion. Now, forget thinking. Remember that I told you the prefrontal cortex, there is no way prefrontal cortex can think of these two things. And this is only two things. What if we add the lateral movements, the obliquity of the pelvis, the knee flexion? Oh my God, and 100 other elements. There is no way to think it. Your body needs to rely on the generators of that pattern that are automatic, just boom, boom, boom. You could be sleepwalking, middle of the night, you're not conscious, you're still walking. Now do it with your left foot. Step forward with the left. You standing on your right leg and you initiating step forward with your left leg and feel how left ankle flexes, dorsiflexes. The right one plantar flexes, right? Feel that you're starting to push off, your right heel possibly starting to lift. And then come back, bring the left foot back to mid stance on both legs and step forward with the left. Feel the left dorsiflexes, the right plantar flexes. The foot that is in front is in dorsiflexion, lengthening the heel by flexing the ankle. Lovely. Come back to the chair, sitting on the chair. Definitely not a swivel chair because we're actually going to walk on the buttocks a little bit. So maybe sofa, maybe stool or something that's sturdy. And see if we could go back to that bird's eye view of the pelvis and imagine us walking on the chair. Small, a few steps forward, few steps back. Feel the pelvis advancing. Make it small, 3-4 degrees, one direction, the other direction, one direction, the other direction. Simple, light movement. And watch, is it easier for you to make a step with your right buttock or left buttock? You may discover some asymmetry. That on one side, it's simple. You could go back and forth, dance like that. And on the other leg, you may feel a little bit sluggish. And then walk backwards a few steps and forwards a few steps. Excellent. And please come to the floor, to the mat. And first sit on the mat. And do the same thing. Walk a little bit on your buttocks with legs long on the floor. If you want me to see you, tilt the camera down. If you prefer black screen, it's okay, whatever you feel like. And then as you're walking, you can lean on your hands behind you. Some of us have difficulty walking with the legs long, so you may need to lean on the hands behind and make a few steps forward and back and feel by turning the pelvis, you elongating one leg and then the other leg and one leg, and you're actually covering a little distance. You get a little forward and then walk backwards. That's right. Good. And now let go of this pelvic movement and go back to flexing and pointing your foot. Many times when I teach, especially oscillation lessons, I make a point of not sliding the heel. But today, I do want you to feel the heel sliding. Feel again your heel reaching out. When you flex the foot, the heel moves away from you. It's not just a pivot point. You know, sometimes we think of, I'll demonstrate here on the silly, on the remote controller and the notepad. Uh, Sometimes we think of the foot and ankle like something like this, like a laptop closing and opening. This is not what happens. Or actually, this is said if this is the only thing that happens. We need to be able to project the heel forward. There is a little bit of kind of like, if you think that foot now is the foot, oh, something clear. Okay, this is the foot. And the tibia is not in the back like this. It's not an L. It's a little bit here. The heel can glide a little bit back and forth. This kind of movement occurring, not a laptop closing and opening. So as you're practicing now, sitting with legs long, flex the heel or flex the ankle and protrude the heel. Make it go longer. And then point your foot and feel now your toes and the ball of the foot gets longer. So you get functional lengthening of the leg on both ends. Heel, toes, heel, toes. Do this on the left side a few times and feel the joy of reaching down with your heel, elongating your leg by flexing your ankle. Sometimes people have the fascia and some other capsule of the joint in the front very tight, and it doesn't allow the talus, the ankle bone, to glide under. There needs to be some kind of manual mobilization to help it. And sometimes, of course, we have fused ankles. We have all sorts of things, right? We have fused toes, big toe that can compromise on our ability to dorsiflex, plantar flex. So we need to respect what we got. Now, combine walking forward on your buttocks with flexing the ankle on the same side. Advance the right pelvis forward and flex your heel push away, and then the left one, and then the right one. See if you can make a few steps on your buttocks. Watch lengthening of your heel as you step forward. Beautiful, beautiful. One side, the other side, one side, the other side. Excellent. Please lie on your back. Enjoy lying, resting on your back. If you prefer with having your knees bent, feel free to have the knees bent if this is more comfortable in your back or hips or any other place. If you're comfortable with legs long, keep them long. And pay attention to how well you know your body, how well you sense it on the floor now. Feel your right leg, the length of it from your heel. Of course, a lot depends on how you rest the leg. Sometimes people who have short calves will have a lot of pointing, like dancers, for example, will be lying with the feet pointed because calves and Achilles are so used to performing and contracting, and even resting position is influenced by that. Feel how much the foot points down on the right. Compare that with the left. Feel the natural turnout in lying on the back. The feet will be open unless they're contracted. The inner thighs are contracted, adductors or outside hip contraction. Observe if one foot is more open, more turned out. Then move your attention to your ankle. See, sense, feel the ankle on the right side. And then your left ankle. Can you picture that tunnel between the two bones of your lower leg? Your lower leg has shin bone, tibia, and the fibula, this little small bone like an arrow on the outside. And actually, what the two bumps on our ankle, inside is the shin and outside is your fibula. This create a pincer where your ankle bone, the talus, is gliding, and that's what makes the flexing and pointing movement possible. Feel the backs of your knees, how they're resting. Are they close to the floor? Are they far? Feel the back of your thighs. Feel your pelvis. Try to picture where hip joints are. Remember that anatomy app, that the cup, where the cup was from underneath? Now the ball of your thigh bone sits in the right hip, the bone of the left thigh in the left hip, and then the position of your pelvis. Observe, maybe your pelvis in resting is actually not symmetrical. Maybe it's twisted a little bit to the right and left. Most of us have some sort of scoliosis, some twists. And so you won't find a perfectly symmetrical pelvis, or it's very rare. Most of us will have our own handwriting of the posture. Notice your lower back, lumbar spine, right and left side. And your ribs, your middle back, your shoulders. Spend a moment to feel your arms contacting the floor and the head. And gently roll onto your left side, please. If you want, put the pillow underneath your head or your left forearm, arm, hand to support your head. Bend both of your knees, both of your hips, so the right knee is resting on the left knee. Both knees are bent in front. And begin this gentle movement of pelvic rotation. Bring your right pelvis, small amount, forward, and then bring it back. And forward, and bring it back. This is another configuration of what we've already done. You did walking on the buttocks, you did the standing portion where I ask you to rotate the pelvis or don't rotate. We did sitting on the chair, we did sitting on the floor. Now you're doing the same thing in side lying. Pay attention to the sensation of your left pelvis, left hip joint, because that's where actually the movement happens. Feel, we may think it's right side because that's what I want to move. I want to move my right pelvis, right hip, right knee, forward, backward. But your left hip is essential. Does it permit movement of the pelvis forward and back? Feel the sensation if the left hip joint is free enough for your pelvis to move back, forth. Don't make it large, make it simple. Are you breathing? Don't be too serious. Watch how the rest of the body is supporting the movement. Can you feel rolling? Can you feel your chest turning, your breastbone moving a little bit to the floor when you go forward, toward the ceiling when you go back? You might feel even your head turning, your nose, your eyes look a little bit toward the ceiling, a little toward the floor. Again, more is not better. You don't have to do more. 3-4 degrees is what we need for perfect walking. Excellent. And then stop and lie on your back, please. And observe, even with this one thing that we did, if your contact with the floor is different, if the right leg feel longer or more open, if the sensation of the right hip joint is more spacious, less jammed, less constricted, but a little bit more breathing room there. Maybe you feel a difference in your lower back on the right side comparing to the left. Now let's do the same in opposite side. Lie on your right side. Arrange yourself so the left knee is on top of the right, left ankle on top of the right ankle, foot to foot. So you're lying symmetrically. You're lying in the neutral position. You're not falling onto your back. You're not falling on the stomach. You're just sideways. And now very gently begin to move your left hip forward and back, left pelvis forward and back. Feel, is this easier for you or more difficult? Do you sense a difference between the two sides? Imagine yourself walking, the bird's eye view, how the pelvis is advancing, making your left leg ready to make a heel contact or go forward, swinging it forward. And then when you're reversing it, when you're moving back, it's the opposite. It's the left leg would be in the heel lift or push off. And you go back and forth. Feel how your right hip, freedom in the right hip determines whether you're able to do it or whether there is a glitch that makes you a little shaky or a little glitch or a little hesitation. Back and forth. A couple more times, moving your pelvis forward and back. And of course, it's not only, somebody mentioned the abdominals, right? If the abdominals are excessively contracted, you will feel that the only way to turn will be like a tube, like a cylinder. But this is also not so efficient to fix the fixation, rigidity. See how the movement travels through your lower back, your lower ribs, to your right shoulder, to your neck, how your head wants to turn. It's not only bottom hip that matters here, although the left hip is essential. There is no way to go around it. If the left hip is a no-go, you try to move the pelvis and you have this. Sometimes when I work hands-on with people, I put my hands behind the pelvis and I push on the pelvis and I want to see, is the pelvis free to yield? And sometimes it feels like a block. I push and there is no go, there is no movement. Or I try to pull the pelvis backward toward me, I'm sitting behind. And imagine if I put my hands on your left pelvis and wanted to pull it or push it. Would you give? Would you release? Would you let go, yield to the movement? Or would it be a little bit of hesitation, little stuckness? Lie on your back and rest, please. Feel change now on the other side. When we learn to pay attention, we find out that it doesn't take much to change, to get better. When you learn how to listen to yourself, you don't actually have to do some spectacular big movements. You learn to focus and sense on the deeper level. Sensing nuances. It's like you're listening to a piece of music for the first time. Okay, you got it. And then you listen to it 100 or 1,000 times. And then you hear things that you've never heard before. They were there before, but you weren't able to perceive. The same thing with our movement practices. We are doing them in order to keep polishing our perception, making it better. Now, please come to side sitting. So sit up. If you're comfortable, put your left foot behind you and right foot in front of you. For people with hip replacements, depending if you have the counterindication not to internally rotate the leg, maybe skip this. Don't put the foot behind you, because this does put the leg into internal rotation. So for the rest, you lean on your right hand, your right knee is in front of you, your right heel is somewhere near your pubic bone in front of your pelvis, and the left foot is behind you. The left knee is bent, left foot is behind you. Now, make a few movements of turning the body, look to the right, and maybe even reach with your left hand in front of you. Left hand, you're leaning on your right hand and turning. You know this for those of you who've studied with us, who did Feldenkrais lessons. You've probably done that dead bird lesson, reaching, rolling around, turning the body, turning the head. We're interested in turning to the right and then coming back and feel. The most important part here is to sense the pelvis, how the pelvis is turning around your right hip joint. Feel that. Bringing your left pelvis forward, bringing it back. In other words, your left buttock comes a little bit off the floor more than naturally, and then it returns. You don't need to turn left. Left will be no value for our lesson today. Turn right, come back. Feel if the left pelvis is sluggish, heavy, or can it swiftly roll over your right hip joint? As you turning, can your belly button turn to the right? Pubic bone, turn to the right. Lift and turn to the right. It's lifting over your right hip. Can you feel your weight is shifting onto your outside right thigh? Some of you do it sitting on the chair. That's fine too. You're moving the left buttock a little bit forward, just like in walking. Remember at the beginning, we were walking on the buttocks, like butt walking. This is what you do here. You turn right, you turn your face right, your chest right, your breastbone right, and your pelvis is rotating relatively to your right hip. Can you sense that? How free is it? Reach with your left hand, as if you wanted to reach for a shelf or something on the coffee table in front of you. Reach, you can lean on your right hand, you lean on the outside right thigh, and you reach forward and feel how the left buttock, left pelvis turns. How free is your pelvis relatively to your right hip? Now, a few times, place your left hand on the left buttock and feel if you could lift it with your hand. Imagine you wanted to scoot somebody like that with the placing left hand on the buttock and zoop, pick it up and turn it. Your belly button turns to the right. Feel how free your pelvis is to turn to the right over standing leg. Imagine this is walking. You're standing on the right foot and you're turning your pelvis. Zoop, zoop. Good. Switch your legs. Swing them to the other side. Lean now on your left hand. Right foot is behind you. Left knee is bent in front, foot in front. And turn your face, your head left and back a few times. And as you're turning left, see, does your pelvis respond automatically? Or are you turning only in your neck? If you turn only in the neck, it means that something is holding your chest. Something is holding your shoulder. Something is holding your pelvis. That's something. What is that something? Who is holding? Oh, wow, it's me who is holding. Where am I holding myself? Where am I not allowing movement to flow? And slowly, with this understanding, feel, can I allow my shoulders to rotate, breastbone to rotate? And finally, the movement will trickle down all the way to your pelvis with your right buttock lifting over your left hip joint. Feel that movement in the left hip joint, in the crease of your pants in the left hip. How the pelvis is rotating over your left femur, your left thigh bone. Reach a few times with your right hand. After you do this, a few movements, put your right hand under the buttock, pick it up, see if it's a light buttock or if it's a heavy buttock. Whatever it is, it's go, good, no problem. Maybe you feel difference from side to side. Maybe one side felt easier. Or maybe it's symmetrical movement. Perfect. Stop, lie on your back. Sense and feel your hips. How well do you know them? How long your legs are, how open they feel. Sense your pelvis, your buttocks, your lower back. And please lie on your left side. This time you will need space in front of you for the right leg. So if you're in the tight quarters, go all the way back. Will need more movement in the front. So have enough room so your top leg, your right leg could come forward. Start with your knees bent and then straighten the legs down, both of the legs down. So you're lying like a pencil, like a straight line, like a log. And then bring your right leg in front of you, just only the right leg, forward. So the right leg will be in front of you, not bent, straight. The knee is straight. It doesn't have to be 90 degrees. For those of you who are dancers and very flexible hamstring, yes, you can go to 90 degrees, but don't torture yourself. We are going to choose 3 different angles for the leg. Have the leg that is as high as you can bring it comfortably, then to the midpoint, and then to the lower point where the leg is almost in front of the bottom leg, just barely anything. If we had an image of a clock and 3 o'clock was straight in front of you, so maybe we put the leg at 4 o'clock or something like this, then at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 3 o'clock is the highest, 4 o'clock is somewhere the midpoint, and 5 o'clock is down closer to. Let's start with the midpoint, the 4 o'clock position. 4 o'clock. And very important to be comfortable. If you're not comfortable, if you need to put a pillow under the knee because it's something uncomfortable, do so. Arrange it. You don't need to torture yourself to learn. And now begin to lengthen your right leg forward as is to that 4 o'clock position. Lengthen your right leg, shorten. You're lying on the left side. You have your right leg in front of you and you elongate that right leg. Think of gait. Think of what you saw in these models, in the pictures from Dr. Newman's book, the pelvis rotating. Feel how your pelvis is rotating forward and come back. And don't go too far forward because you will fall. Again, if it's excessive movement, it's not going to help us. We don't need it. Feel how smooth can you make it. And another interesting thing is, how are you returning? How do you come back? Some of us need our right hand in front to push off. Now, challenge yourself. Could you have your right hand on the side of the body, or maybe even elbow bent, like a little kangaroo bent elbow somewhere resting on the torso, and lengthen your right leg At 4 o'clock. Do not move the leg in front. Stay in front and just lengthen it, shorten it. As you're reaching with the leg that's at the same angle, forward a little bit and back. Let's do it 4 or 5 more times. Lengthen your right leg, shorten, lengthen, shorten. Feel. To shorten, it requires your hip muscles, inner thigh muscles to work quite hard. Can you feel that? Don't go a lot. Don't go a lot. Some of you are still sweeping the floor forward and back in the circle. No need to. Your leg is at the same angle and you make it only 1/4 inch longer and 1/4 inch shorter. Longer, shorter. Don't change angle. Don't change angle. You'll feel your pelvis needs to go forward a little bit and backward, and forward a little bit and backward. That's what you do in walking, or you could do in walking. That's what could make the energy, preserving energy. Good. Let's go to 3 o'clock, which will be higher up, or maybe it's 3:30. Bring the leg there and lengthen a few times here. Lengthen your leg, shorten the leg. Lengthen, shorten. Feel control. Can you control that elongation and shortening of your right leg? You pushing it forward, you pulling it back. Feel the inner thigh muscles working on the way back. Also, the bottom leg is not passive. It actually needs to help. Feel your core muscles, your pelvic floor muscles. All of those have to wake up. Excellent. Now go to 5 o'clock position. The leg is not making a long step. It's barely any. And now lengthen there. Elongate your right leg. This will be lengthening your waistline even more, your right ribs. Feel rotation in the middle back, in the thoracic spine. Back and forth. Simple, 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 simple. When done properly, it's a very powerful movement. You will see in a moment when you lie on your back what happens. Good. Stop, lie on your back. Check it if it's true what I'm saying. If there is a big difference between the right and left legs. Feel. Some of you will actually feel blown away by, whoa, how much the right leg open, lengthen, what happened in the back, abdomen. Let's do this on the other side. Lie on your right side. Lie on your right side. Straighten both legs. Balance yourself first, because if you're off balance, it will be very hard for you to perform the movement without strain. So first, find a balancing point. Then bring your left leg in front to middle position. We'll call it 8 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock will be straight in front, 8 o'clock little down, 7 o'clock will be way down. Balance yourself, go to 8 o'clock, and in 8 o'clock position, lengthen your foot, maybe just 1/2 inch, and then shorten, which means your left pelvis is going forward and then retracting back. Feel interesting how those adductors help you retract back, pull back, and then reaching forward, pulling back. No need to hold your breath. No need to do any circus, big movements, smaller, efficient. Little forward, little back, little forward, little back. Fabulous. Go to 9 o'clock, higher up. Make a 4, 3, 4, 5 movements in this direction. If you're completely struggling, you could put your left hand in front of you and push off your left hand. That will be okay. Eventually, we want to use the core muscles, inner thighs, pelvic floor, abdominals, back, the corset muscles to to negotiate this lengthening, shortening. When you've done it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, bring your leg to 7 o'clock, which is small step forward, like barely any in front, little small step. And then go there. Lengthen your left leg, shorten it. Lengthen and shorten, and pay attention to the movement of the pelvis. It's very interesting movement. There is some rotation, of course, forward. Less rotation than when you had the leg more in front of you, but there is more of elongation of the waistline and your left ribs. There you go. And then come back onto your back. So when we did 3 movements, 4 or 5 movements, that's enough. Lie on your back, feel the left leg now. Feel how rapid change is. Sense the length of the left leg, openness, contact of your back with the floor, contact of your legs with the floor. Please return onto your left side lying. Now we're going to combine foot flexion. We'll do the same movements, once with pointing the foot and once with flexing the foot, eventually learning that strategy, the first 2 strategies for conservation of energy, of pelvic rotation and heel lifting, dorsiflexion. But first we need to find all possibilities. Lying preferably with the left leg long, the bottom leg long. If it's too uncomfortable for your balance, then that's okay. Bend the bottom leg a little bit. Bring your right leg to 4 o'clock, which is somewhere half point. And now let's literally make it 3 movements. Lengthen your right leg and point your toes. Retract and flex your ankle. Point your toes when you lengthen. Flex your foot when you're pulling back. Do it 3 times. Good. Switch to 3 o'clock position, leg in front. Same idea. Point when you're lengthening. Flex when you're coming back. Point when you're going forward. Flex when you go back. Feel, experience. What does that feel like to time lengthening of the leg with pointing? How is that for you? Is this what you did naturally? In the previous sequence, I didn't tell you what to do with your foot. It was just lengthen and shorten your leg. Maybe your leg was in neutral, like somewhere resting position. Maybe you were automatically doing something with your foot. Now go to the 3rd position. So it'll be 5 o'clock and the same idea. Point when you lengthen, flex when you shorten, point when you lengthen, flex when you shorten. 3 times is enough. Go back to 4 o'clock and let's reverse it. Flex when you reach. Flex your ankle and think of your heel reaching. This is your heel strike or heel kiss, heel contact. You're lengthening, you're rolling the pelvis, and you are reaching with your heel away. And then you can point as you come back or release that reaching with the heel. Feel how you're rolling over your left ribs, left waistline, left hip. Then 3 o'clock and 3 movements there. Reaching forward, flexing, pushing the heel away. Returning, toes point or heel withdraws. Forward, heel reaches. Feel that lengthening, that not a laptop movement, closing, opening of the ankle, but actually that little glide to push the heel forward to functionally elongate your leg. Beautiful. Third position, 5 o'clock, same idea. Lengthen, flex your ankle. Retract, point your ankle. So you have 3 possibilities explored. With the foot neutral, with the foot pointed, with the foot flexed. Lie on your back, check again. What's different in your lying on the right leg? How is the right leg, right side of the body resting? Back, how reorganizing this movement can be. For me, and many clients that I work with, I find these movements are like one of those 2-minute miracles. You do a few movements with one angle, another angle, third angle, 3-4 movements, and then you stop, and then you do it on the other side. Huge changes with a short period of time. It actually will be part of our homework during this week, that we will experience this particular sequence. Now please lie on your right side, and let's do the same. This will be, what is it, 8 o'clock position, somewhere midpoint. Start with pointing the foot and lengthen 3 times only. Point and lengthen, flex and shorten, point and lengthen, flex and shorten. Make sure you're comfortable. Don't work hard. Work skillfully. Hard work is not going to train your CPGs, central pattern generators. Your brain will start to pulling away from it. I don't want that hard work. This is not good. It's hurting me. I don't want that. You need to learn how, in the next 30 days when we work together, learning how to make movements that are pleasing, that are nice. Go to 9 o'clock. Do the same thing. Point with reaching, flex with retracting. Just 3 times, but no rushing. Point, reaching, flex, retracting. And then 7 o'clock, leg in front, but barely flex, somewhat flex, lightly flex, and lengthen there. Pointing, retract, flexing, pointing, retract, flexing, pointing, and retract, flexing. Back to 8 o'clock, we reverse the footwork. Flex your ankle, reach with your heel while you're lengthening. This is your step. Coming back, releasing or pointing. Flex, push the heel away, far, far, far. Come back. 3 times. Then go to 9 o'clock or higher up, whatever 9 o'clock is your 9 o'clock. Lengthen, heel pushes away. You elongate your limb. And then you shorten it as you're retracting back. And elongate, and shorten, and elongate, and shorten. Change angle, go to down position, to 7 o'clock position, and do the same thing. Lengthen and flex your heel. Flex your ankle. Point, come back. Lengthen, flex. Point, come back. Perfect. Lie on your back, please. And feel what kind of change you notice in your body. For some of you, again, it will be a dramatic change in flatness, in length, in openness of the hips, in freedom, sensation of spaciousness. And now please come up to sitting and come up to standing. And let's see what standing's like. Some of you will feel a little dizzy, a little lightheaded. Take time in with getting up. Maybe sit for a moment before you get up. And then get up and feel how you're standing on your 2 feet, on your 2 legs. And then please begin to walk and feel what's your spontaneous walking like. Don't think too much. Rely on your CPGs, central pattern generators, not thinking. We need to think during the process while we're doing these movements. You have to think, am I at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock? What am I doing? When I'm using, what am I not using? Yes, we need to spend a lot of time. But the point is actually to make changes automatic for you. Not that you have to think every step you make. This will be super inefficient and consuming energy. Your brain consumes so much energy. So we don't want to spend on this kind of thing. We want to make it effective. Throughout the rest of the day, and maybe throughout this week, we are going to stay with this theme with our practices every week, every day. Pay attention to these 2 strategies, rotation of the pelvis and heel flexion when you're reaching forward with the foot. Pay attention while you're walking spontaneously to that. And I hope we'll now have a question and answer session. I'll start the recording and I hope to see you tomorrow for the session recorded and then in a week for the regular session.